My entitled sister quit her job, now demands I pay her bills because I got her the interview. My sister is currently demanding I fund her life after she voluntarily quit her job. Her reasoning? She claims I'm personally responsible for her failure because I, wait for it, gave her a recruiter's email address 6 months ago. Now my entire family is blowing up my phone saying I set her up to fail and that I owe her a comeback on my dime. Here's the story. I, 33F, have a younger sister, Talia, 26F, who has always had big plans and very little patience for anything that doesn't move fast. She talks in goals and timelines, but when things get uncomfortable or slow, she switches directions instead of pushing through. A couple of years ago, she decided she wanted to pivot into a new field. Not entry level, not training programs, not internships. She wanted something that looked impressive right away. She asked if I could help her get in somewhere through people I knew professionally. I told her very clearly that I wasn't going to recommend her directly to anyone at my job and that I wasn't putting my name on anything. What I did do was give her contact info for a recruiter I had worked with once in the past and told her she could reach out herself and see what happened. That was the full extent of my involvement. She contacted the recruiter. She interviewed. She got hired. It was not at my workplace, not with my manager, not with anyone I knew personally. Different company, different team, different chain of command. I didn't speak to anyone there before or after she was hired. At first she was excited. Then the tone shifted. She started calling me to complain that the work was too structured, that they expected her to already understand systems she hadn't used before, that people were correcting her in meetings, and it made her look bad. She said her supervisor was cold and that the environment felt hostile. From what she described, it sounded like normal performance feedback. I told her that starting in a new field is usually rough and that it takes time to adjust. She didn't like that answer. 3 months later, she quit. Not fired. She quit. She told our parents that the company had basically pushed her out. She told extended family that they were setting her up to fail. She posted vague stuff on Instagram about being burned by toxic workplaces and learning who really supports you when things get hard. I stayed completely out of it. I didn't defend the company, and I didn't argue with her version of events publicly. I figured it was her experience, and she could frame it however she wanted. Then months passed, and she started saying she couldn't get interviews. At first, she said the industry was just closed off. Then she said recruiters were ghosting her. Then she said her last workplace must have flagged her. Then that turned into the recruiter being mad at her. And then that somehow turned into me being the problem. She told our parents that the recruiter only worked with her because I put pressure on them, and that when things didn't work out, it made the recruiter look bad. So now they were blocking her from opportunities. Which isn't true, because I never spoke to that recruiter again after I gave her the contact info. I wasn't involved in her hiring. I wasn't involved in her quitting. I wasn't involved in anything after that first message where I said, here's their email. But now, apparently, I had opened a door the wrong way and slammed it shut on her future. She called me one night and went straight into it. She said, you pushed me into something I wasn't ready for, and now you're acting like it's not your problem. I said, I didn't push you into anything. You asked for a contact. That's all I gave you. She said, you knew I trusted you. That means you were responsible for how this turned out. I said, trust doesn't mean I control what happens to you. She said, it means accountability. You don't get to just shrug and say not my fault. I told her she made every decision herself, including quitting, and that she didn't get to rewrite that now. She got angry and said I was always like this, always acting superior and pretending I had nothing to do with things when I clearly influence people. I told her, you influence people too. You just don't like the results when it doesn't go your way. She hung up on me. After that, I started getting messages from our parents saying Talia was really struggling and that I needed to be more supportive instead of being technically correct. I asked what that meant. They said she felt betrayed and embarrassed and that I should acknowledge that I played a role in how things unfolded. I said, what role? Giving her an email address. They said I was being dismissive and that if I hadn't given her that contact, she wouldn't be in this position. I said she would be in some other position blaming someone else. That didn't go over well. Then Talia messaged me again, this time calmer, and said she wasn't asking me to admit fault publicly, but that I should help her financially while she tried to recover because I had a hand in setting her up for this situation. I said no. She said, so you're just going to watch me struggle after putting me on this path? I said, you were already on that path. You chose it. She said I was heartless. I said she was entitled. She said I had always looked down on her and that this was just proof I never wanted her to succeed. I told her, you quit and now you're mad that the world didn't pause to protect your feelings. She told me I didn't understand how humiliating it was to fail publicly. I said, "You're the one telling everyone you failed publicly." That set her off. She started messaging me long paragraphs about how I've always had it easier, how I get respect automatically, how people listen to me, and how when she finally tried to step up, I left her hanging. I told her she was confusing my not fixing her problems with me causing them. She told me I was gaslighting her. I told her she was rewriting reality. Then she posted something on Facebook about how some people love giving advice, but disappear when their advice destroys your life. I didn't comment, but mutual relatives did, and suddenly I was getting messages asking if I had led her wrong and whether I felt bad about what happened. I replied to one person that I hadn't advised her to quit and I hadn't arranged her job. That got back to Talia and she messaged me furious, saying I was making her look unstable and irresponsible. I told her she was doing that herself by blaming everyone but herself. She said, "Of course you'd say that. You never admit when you hurt people." I said, "You're not hurt. You're angry that I won't fund your comeback story." She told me I was cruel. I told her she was reckless and wanted someone else to absorb the consequences. Then she went to our parents again and told them I was refusing to help her even though I caused the mess. They called me and said this was turning into a family issue and that I needed to decide what kind of sister I wanted to be. I said, "One who doesn't pay to be blamed." They said I was being stubborn and cold. I said they were enabling. They said I was attacking instead of helping. I said they were pressuring instead of listening. Then my dad said, "If you hadn't interfered with her career, we wouldn't be here." That was the first time anyone flat out accused me of interfering. I said, "Interfered how?" "By giving her a recruiter's email." He said, "By putting ideas in her head and letting her think she was ready." I said, "She thought she was ready before she ever talked to me." My mom said, "You're missing the point. She feels like you set her up." I said, "Feelings don't change facts." My mom said, "You always hide behind facts when people are hurting." I said, "And you hide behind emotions when people need to take responsibility." That call ended with my parents saying they were disappointed in me and that I needed to think about whether being right mattered more than being supportive. After that, Talia sent me a message that said, "Congratulations, you got what you wanted. Everyone sees who you really are now." I replied, "If who I really am is someone who won't take the blame for your choices, then fine." She said, "You could at least admit you influenced me." I said, "You influence yourself more than anyone else ever could." She said, "You're impossible." I said, "You're exhausting." She told me I was arrogant and that I'd never understand what it's like to feel like a failure. I told her, "You quit one job and turned it into a personality." She told me I was disgusting for saying that. I told her she was dramatic for making her career my responsibility. She stopped replying after that, but the messages from relatives didn't. People started telling me I should just help her for now and deal with the rest later, that I should stop being so rigid, that I should remember she's younger and still figuring things out. I told one relative that she's old enough to decide to quit a job and young enough to expect someone else to fix it. Update 1. After I posted, Talia didn't message me at all for a couple days, which honestly felt worse than the fighting because I knew it meant she was doing something else instead. And I was right, because instead of talking to me, she started talking around me. The first call I got was from my dad. Not even a hello, just straight into it. He said Talia felt like I had positioned her into a situation she wasn't ready for, and that I should at least admit I played a role in how it turned out. I told him I didn't position her anywhere. I gave her a contact, and she took it from there. He said, "You know people listen to you. You have influence." I said, "Influence doesn't mean I run her calendar or her performance reviews." He said I was being cold and technical. I said he was being dramatic and trying to turn this into something it wasn't. He sighed and said, "I just think you could soften your stance." I said, "I'm not softening reality to make her feel better." That ended with him saying, "We'll talk later." In that tone, that means someone else already talked to him first. Then my mom sent me this long message. Not angry, more like emotional and heavy. She said Talia felt humiliated, that she'd cried all night, that she felt like I opened a door and disappeared, and that as her older sibling I should have protected her better. I replied that I didn't disappear. I checked in, she told me she was fine, and I wasn't her supervisor or her therapist. My mom said, "Sometimes support isn't about rules, it's about being there." I said, "I can't be there inside her job." She said, "You could at least apologize for how she feels." I said I wasn't apologizing for something I didn't do. That's when the social media started. She posted on Facebook first, long vague paragraph about betrayal, about being pushed into professional spaces before being ready, about how some people love the credit when things look good and vanish when things get hard. No names, but we all know how that works. People were reacting, commenting hearts, and saying things like, "You deserved support," and "Families shouldn't treat you like that." Someone I barely talked to anymore commented, "I know exactly what that feels like." I was already annoyed, but then someone else commented, "Some people only help when it benefits them." That one did it. I commented and said, "I didn't push you anywhere. You asked for a contact. You made the choices after that. Don't change the story story now. She deleted my comment within minutes. Then she posted again saying, when you speak up and get shut down, it just proves the point. People started reacting to that. Then she moved to Instagram stories. Multiple slides, no names, but all about being set up to fail, about trusting the wrong people, about how some people hide behind professionalism to avoid responsibility. She added those question box things like, ever been betrayed by someone close to you? And people were answering, and she was reposting them. I started getting DMs asking if I really forced her into a job she didn't want. One person straight up asked if I had pressured her manager to fire her. That was the moment I messaged her directly. I said, stop using social media to rewrite what happened. She replied, stop pretending you didn't influence my life. I said, influence is not control. You quit. You chose that. She said, I quit because I was drowning and you weren't there. I said, it wasn't my job to manage your workplace. She said, that's convenient. I told her she was turning this into a story where everyone else is the villain and she's the victim. She said, funny coming from someone who always lands on their feet. I said, this isn't about me landing anywhere. This is about you refusing to own what went wrong. She said, you always think you're better than me. I said, this has nothing to do with better. It has to do with you blaming me for things you did. She said I was cold and selfish. I said she was twisting facts to get sympathy. That's when she did something I did not expect. She contacted the recruiter again, not to apply for anything, but to complain. She sent them this long message about how my personal recommendation had ruined her reputation and how she was now being blacklisted because of me. The recruiter forwarded it to me asking what was going on and why my sister was claiming I had vouched for her and pressured them to place her. I replied and said exactly what happened. I shared an email address, nothing more, and I never spoke to anyone about her application. The recruiter confirmed that in writing and said my name wasn't part of any hiring decision and never had been. I forwarded that to Talia. She said the recruiter was lying to cover themselves. I said, so now everyone is lying except you? She said, you always side with strangers over your own family. I said, I side with facts. She said, no, you side with whatever makes you look clean. That turned into her accusing me of never wanting her to succeed, of secretly enjoying that she struggled, of liking that I looked more stable by comparison. I told her, you are not losing jobs because of me. You are losing them because you don't take feedback and you leave when things get uncomfortable. She told me I was arrogant and condescending. I told her she was allergic to responsibility. She said I was heartless. I said she was manipulative. She said, at least I admit when I need help. I said, you don't want help, you want someone to blame. Then she sent a message that felt very deliberate. I'll take a quick break here to remind you, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments if you're enjoying the story and tell us if something like this has ever happened to you. She said that if I didn't help her financially for a while, she would be honest with people about how I sabotaged her start in the industry and how she had proof I pushed her into it. I told her that was blackmail and she knew it. She said, call it whatever you want. You still caused this. I told her if she lied about me publicly, I would correct it publicly. She said, good luck convincing people when I'm the one who's struggling. After that, my parents called me together, both of them on speaker, serious voices, like they were calling about an emergency. They said they were worried about Talia's mental health and that I should help just to calm things down. I said, so I pay her to stop blaming me? They said I was twisting it. I said they were enabling it. My mom said, you always have to be right. I said, and she always has to be the victim. My dad told me to lower my voice. I said, I'm not the one threatening to lie about someone for money. My mom said I was being harsh. I said, she's being calculated. My dad said, she's your sister. I said, and I'm not her punching bag. My mom said, why can't you just help her a little until she gets back on her feet? I said, because this isn't about her feet. This is about her story. That ended with my dad saying I was making everything worse and my mom crying and saying she didn't recognize me when I talked like this. Since then, Talia hasn't messaged me directly, but she's still posting. Not daily, but enough that people keep asking questions. Vague comments about betrayal, about being thrown under the bus, about how some people smile in public and destroy you privately. I stopped responding publicly after the deleted comment situation, but I haven't backed down privately either. Every time someone messages me telling me to just apologize, I tell them I'm not apologizing for something I didn't do. And if they think I should pay someone to stop lying about me, they can send her money themselves. That didn't go over well with a few people. One person told me I was cruel. I told them they were gullible. Another said I should be the bigger person. I told them being bigger doesn't mean being quieter when someone is trashing you. Update 2. I started getting messages from people I hadn't spoken to in years. Old classmates, former co-workers of hers, a cousin I barely talked to. The tone was always the same. Careful, loaded, pretending to be neutral while clearly fishing. Hey, just checking in. Are you and Talia okay? I heard there was some professional stuff that got messy. I don't want to take sides, but I replied to a few at first with short, factual responses. I shared a recruiter's email. That's it. Most stopped responding after that. A couple replied with, well, that's not what I heard. That's when I realized she wasn't just vague posting anymore. She was actively telling people a version of the story where I was a central character. The next escalation came through WhatsApp from my mom in a group chat that included me, her, my dad, and Talia. No warning. My mom wrote, "We need to talk like adults. This has gone too far." Talia immediately followed with a long message about how she felt emotionally misled, how she trusted my judgment, how I positioned her for failure, and how the aftermath had closed doors she can't reopen. I replied, "You quit. You were not fired. You weren't blacklisted. This isn't a mystery." She responded, "You don't get to decide what damage looks like for me." My dad jumped in and said, "Lower the temperature. This doesn't need to be hostile." I said, "It didn't need to be public either, but here we are." Talia accused me of weaponizing logic and hiding behind technicalities. She said if I had really cared, I would have checked in more, coached her, intervened, or warned her she wasn't ready. I said, "You didn't ask for coaching. You asked for access." She said, "You knew I was vulnerable." That set me off. I wrote, "You weren't vulnerable. You were impatient. You wanted something shiny and got mad when it required effort." My mom told me to stop attacking her. I said, "I'm not attacking her. I'm responding to accusations." Talia wrote, "You've always been like this. You don't support people unless they succeed immediately. You like being the stable one." I replied, "You like being rescued without admitting you jumped." That's when she dropped what she'd been hinting at. She said she'd been talking to people in the industry about her experience and that patterns were emerging about how I insert myself and then disengage. She said maybe I didn't realize the reputation I was building. I asked her, "Are you threatening me?" She said, "I'm telling the truth." I told her in that same chat that if she continued spreading false claims involving my professional conduct, I would respond publicly with receipts and names. My dad told me I was escalating. I said, "No, I'm drawing a line." After that, the group chat went silent for about 12 hours. Then I woke up to an email from someone I actually work with. Not my boss, not HR, a peer. They'd seen a post shared privately in a professional circle about family favoritism gone wrong and wanted to know if it involved me. That's when I stopped being quiet. I didn't make a dramatic post. I didn't rant. I didn't tag anyone. I wrote a single, direct statement on my own Facebook page. I said I had shared a recruiter's contact years ago, that I had no role in hiring, training, evaluating, or managing my sister, that she quit voluntarily, that any claims otherwise were false. I said I wouldn't discuss it further. I turned off comments. Within minutes, my phone started blowing up. Talia accused me of humiliating her. My mom said I had made it worse. My dad said I should have warned them first. I replied to all of them separately. To my mom, "I'm not sacrificing my reputation to preserve her narrative." To my dad, "You told me to stop escalating. I stopped absorbing." To Talia, "You brought my name into professional spaces." I took it back out. She sent me a message that was pure rage. She said I had destroyed her credibility, that people were now questioning her, that I had flipped the script to make her look unstable. I told her, "You flipped it the moment you started telling people I sabotaged you." She called me cruel. I told her she was reckless. She said I had no empathy. I said, "Empathy doesn't include accepting blame for fiction." Then she made her final demand. She said if I didn't help her financially for the next few months, she would stop protecting me and let people connect the dots however they wanted. I replied once. I said, "Do whatever you think helps you sleep." After that, I blocked her. Not ceremonially, not with an announcement. I just stopped letting messages through. The fallout wasn't explosive. It was quieter and sharper. Some relatives stopped talking to me completely. A couple unfollowed me without a word. One mutual friend sent me a long message about how I could have handled it with more grace. I replied, "Grace isn't compliance," and archived the chat. My parents still talk to me, but it's strained. My mom keeps trying to frame it as both sides made mistakes. I don't correct her anymore. Talia, from what I hear through other people, is still telling her story, but now it's smaller, less confident, more defensive. The end. NTA, your sister is a spoiled, blame-shifting drama llama who rage quit her own bad decisions and now wants you to pay for her therapy arc. You gave her one email. She turned it into a conspiracy theory starring you as the evil puppet master. She's 26. She can adult without your wallet or your apology. Stay blocked. Stay unbothered. Stay NTA. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Got a story to share? Drop it in the comments and let us know which one was your favorite.